All right.
Thanks, David. I'm losing my voice a little bit because I was up here all weekend at a soccer tournament screaming and yelling like crazy, which maybe wasn't the best planning move on my part. So why should publishers care about wearable technology? I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in education and a little bit of what's going on now with wearable technology and where I think it's going. So just a little bit of a background on, what is a wearable computer and what is it meant to be. It's supposed to be something that you interact with, but it's not too invasive to your daily activities, and it learns about what you want to know and provides just that amount of context to your life. So there's a lot of wearable computers out there today. Some of you may have the Jawbone Up or the Fitbit, the Fuel Band, and there are new watches that are being released, and a whole slew of glasses and motorcycle helmets and ski goggles and fancy things like that. So I definitely think that if you're not interested in using one of these devices, there's probably somebody that you know who has one. And there are varying uses for wearable computers. Education, enrichment, gaming, entertainment, which I group together because I think it's a continuum. How content creation in terms of research will be affected by having these devices on our body. Folks who are capturing what they're going about on a daily basis, information about their activities, particularly in terms of memory assistance devices. A lot of interest, of course, in health and sensory data. And then, what role is this going to play in terms of our social activities and our communication with each other? I just threw a couple of apps up there so you can see. The gentleman on the bike is using an app called Strava, which if you ride the same bike path every day or you jog the same course, you can race yourself and see how you're doing in comparison. On the bottom is a screenshot from Race Yourself where you can set it up to be chased by zombies. And if they catch you, then you lose. The center, the fellow with the Google Glass on that is an art gallery that's using glass to provide more information to their guests about different pieces of art. And then the one on the left, it's a little hard to see. It's an application where you can actually look at a movie poster and it will start to play the trailer for you. So, lots of kind of cool things trying to get off the ground now. Another area where I think there's going to be a lot of interest is the safety, security, policing, military continuum. There are police officers and security agents trying out, Google Glass in different contexts. Accessibility and assistive devices, which I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about, navigation, apps and enhancement, as well as the ability to do advertising and purchasing via glass and other devices. And then finally, the augmented, annotated, and also diminished reality, your ability to switch off anything that you don't want to see and set something at your preference. So just on the upper right is you can scan the barcode and get information about the product. Some of these things happen now already with phones, but it just gives you a little bit more of a hands-free experience, transport information, directions, actually bringing things that we do in other apps now, Yelp, Foursquare, and the like, into more of an overlayer. And the security officer down on the left. Now, history of wearable computers, there's been some times where there was a great interest in this and sometimes where it's taken a little bit of a backseat. That first device in the upper right corner is actually a card counting device that was used by some folks who went to Vegas to cheat the system, and they could make the cards count through this device in their shoes. Some teams, there's Steve Mann, he's done a lot in terms of wearable computers at University of Toronto, and of course locally here, labs at MIT and Columbia University, and nice to see the little evolution of some of the wearable devices there. And people say, that glass looks ridiculous. Well, I think if you're interested in these, you have to be willing to look a little bit ridiculous at sometimes. So So then there was a little bit of a lag in terms of interest in wearable computers, but what was happening during that time in the early 2000s were lots of technology developments. The processors got so much better, more memory in a smaller device, both battery size and capacity, as well as the thickness and sharpness of displays that we've come to interact with on a daily basis, and connectivity through broadband. So while all of these developments were taking place, they enabled wearable technology to really come on full force with what we see today in terms of the various devices I mentioned. Now, where are we going tomorrow? Google's been talking about, contact lenses that will monitor your blood sugar, which is interesting. There are pills that will collect data as they travel, through your body, and as increasingly we find that our refrigerator is connected to our car, the Internet of Things is going to make wearable computing. If you're at the store and you can't remember what you need in terms of groceries, you could just ask your refrigerator in your cupboard, hey, what do I need? I know I could use that. So now I want to talk a little bit more detail about Google Glass, and I just became fascinated with it from the first early announcements, and I entered a contest in the spring of 2013, and I asked my husband, can I enter this contest? And he said, well, what happens if you win? I said, well, we have to actually purchase glass. And he's like, well, how much is that? And I said, well, it's $1,500. I said, but don't worry, I'm never going to win. Just, don't worry about that. And I did, I was fortunate enough to be selected as one of 8,000 initial explorers. And I picked up my glass in New York in June of 2013. Just a little bit of detail about what the specs are for glass. There are monthly software updates that happen, so each day you put them on, they might do something a little bit differently than the day before, which is both alarming and also amazing. In November of last year, they actually released the developer's kit. And I actually sat through the video about it, not because I was going to create an app myself, but it helped me better understand the navigational structure and what some of the limitations are, what's a persistent app versus not. In December, I was able to swap my first edition glass for a second edition. And so that's been exciting. And I kept up commercial release 2014. I know that there's better ability to, if you're interested in glass, just sign up and be able to purchase a pair now. But I don't consider that really a full commercial release. I don't think the cost has come down enough to make it of any general interest, other than the folks who are trying to monetize apps there. And just some screenshots. So it operates in terms of you can ask it questions. It doesn't have a keyboard, obviously, at this point. Or you navigate through screens. You can take pictures. If anybody has an Android phone and they use Google Now, the cards that it shows to you based upon if I have an appointment in a certain location, it will tell me the traffic. If I have a flight tomorrow, it will start to give me the weather in the city that I'm going to. Interesting implications around, options. Should I take public transit or should I, try to go in a taxi? More information at a glance. But there's a lot of interest in terms of teaching and learning, and in particularly instances of just-in-time contextual learning. What is this building, what is this particular type of tree? I was walking down the street in Austin, Texas, and there were these amazing whistling birds, and so I just asked the glasses, what are the black birds with the big long tails that live in Austin, Texas? And it came up, great-tailed grackles, and it started to tell me about it, and it was just, it wasn't worth it for me to pull my phone out, but I was able to kind of ask in the moment. A lot of pilots and testing going on in the medical space now. The ability for doctors to be able to do consultations with colleagues who are not present in the room, information at a glance. And when we think about products like, UpToDate and things that physicians regularly use, then being able to just quickly check something there, being able to see lab results and test results easily in a hands-free manner. The engineering and architecture folks are also, anything that's going to require structural schematics or safety checklists, mapping, geolocation, it's of tremendous use, capturing information in terms of journalists, and in field work, interviewing subjects without having a large intrusive camera, being able to keep that eye contact with someone. All of these things are coming. I just wanted to draw attention, it's hard to see, but the center screen, there's someone has created a fingertip ultrasound connection. So while the doctor's actually running his finger along the arm muscle, on the upper corner, he sees the ultrasound image, so he doesn't have to keep turning to a screen behind him and trying to match up, or where is this on the patient. So all kinds of interesting things now that I think are being tried, and if your publications affect these spaces, it's something to definitely keep an eye on. The agricultural industry has taken to glass in a big way, being able to look out over certain fields and see at a glance this particular pesticide was used here, or this is a particular strain of wheat versus another, gets people a little bit closer. The lady on the left-hand side is doing a rhino collection project, monitoring the behavior and location of various rhinos in, I think, Malaysia, and to be able to connect glass up with other data visualization techniques. Leaf snap there at the top, I heard about this a few weeks ago at the Highwire meeting. If you are on a nature walk and you want to just look at a tree and say, what kind of tree is this? It recognizes the leaf, and it will tell you. So, from an educational standpoint, that's, I think, particularly useful for engaging the kids. But accessibility is where a lot of the really, really interesting stuff is happening right now. And in terms of folks who are visually or hearing impaired, even those of us who would actually like just a little bit of a bigger image of that receipt before we sign it. For folks who are hearing impaired, there's an app that will allow them, if they're not lip readers, to see in real time speech to text of the person that they're speaking with. So it's like closed captioning for life in real time. There's an app for people who are visually impaired that you can point to an item on the grocery store shelf, or even in your own refrigerator at home, and it will tell you Minute Maid orange juice, 2% milk. So again, some of these things exist now for phones, but in a hands-free environment. David actually showed me something on Wednesday during the board meeting, which hadn't occurred to me, but is particularly apropos for the astronomy keynote. When you're in a planetarium, it has to be dark. If you cannot hear the narration, you're missing out on part of the experience. And if they do put a spotlight on a sign language interpreter, you maybe hinder the ability of some of the other folks to see. So there's an app where your interpreter can be in the next room, lighted room, and you can see them while you're looking up at the planetarium show. And I mentioned this to Chris after his talk yesterday, and he said both of his parents were deaf, and this would have been an amazing thing, to have, years ago. In terms of navigation, again, object recognition, and for folks who are, mobility impaired, to be able to go out and experience things that they might not be able to travel to directly. I can take my parents with me to the kids' concert at school, and they can watch in real time on my glasses and, annoy me with their questions if they so choose. And the lower left is an actual emotion detection app that some autism researchers are trying to put together to help folks who have difficulty interpreting facial expressions have more cues at their disposal. Now, what is the implications for publishers? I do think there will be content created on glass and content consumed on glass. Now, I don't want to look at a PDF on glass, but if I want information about the location that I'm in, I would like that in a sort of super mobile format. I'll show you a couple of apps, but if you publish anything that's tied to a certain location, and in the opening keynote, Rick Joyce had said, if you're walking by, a statue of Christopher Columbus, it may want to tell you more about Columbus or other things you'd be interested in. If I don't take my phone out of my pocket when I'm at that location, I would never know that offer was there for me. Obviously, anatomical information, medical schools are experimenting with students being able to wear glass, so when they're looking at their cadaver that they're working on, they can pull up information about the heart or the circulatory system or the nervous system. And anybody who's had to deal with, supplemental data, there's interesting ways to bring that supplemental data to the fore. But there are concerns, of course. What are the implications for our privacy, both the privacy of our data and also our personal privacy? And how is this going to change us? Is this going to make us even more withdrawn into our devices and not interacting with people? I mean, none of these questions, have really been answered. And I think as a glass explorer, I feel like the burden is on me to make people feel comfortable with them and to be respectful, not put them on in a situation that's going to be, invasive for someone, which is why I wear them a lot, on top of my head to keep them out of the way. But there's also issues around copyright and how are we going to deal with the content that's produced, making sure that, all of that rights information is collected. Just a couple of apps. Google actually just bought this company about 10 days ago. It's called WordLens, and it exists for phones. So if you are looking at a sign, you can ask Glass to translate it. This is a pretty low-tech example, just someone holding up a sign, and then it will actually translate the sign for you. But the important thing to note from this is if it's a red sign with white letters in a Helvetica font, when it shows you the translation, it keeps the color of the sign, the color of the letters, and the font. So it's almost like the words just change right in front of your eyes. And I know folks who've traveled and used this to read signage, and they found it to be pretty amazing. Field Trip is an app that has geographical information. If something is happening nearby to you, it will pop up a card and tell you about it. So I walked around London, and if I was in front of a church and it happened to have information about that structure, I could choose to hear more. I was walking around Charleston in November, and it was showing me pictures of what that street corner looked like after the devastation of the Civil War. So libraries with digital collections that are tied to an area, publishers with a strong emphasis there's going to be a role. If you're a tourist like me, being able to get this type of information is pretty useful. If you're a sports fan, folks are working on those apps as well. So if you have content that is statistical, you can get information about the game going on in real time. And I had to update this slide from my talk I did previously because they actually just made the app so much better with more information that it could provide you. And already we're on multiple screens sometimes at events as it is. So recognizing the concerns, I think that there's a lot of promise. Having the glass immediately in your field of vision or not, if it's not for you, reduces the amount of time between your intention and your action. The only good use that I've ever thought of for QR codes. Wow. The fellow in the center, he's a doctor, and instead of putting the patient's name on the outside of the door, which is a privacy issue, there's a QR code that pulls up all the information that he needs. So there's hospitals piloting that. The upper right is live streaming, so you can't go to Times Square yourself, but you can actually experience it through your friends. Think of the implication for celebrities. You could subscribe to their Glass channel and just follow them around virtually all day. The opportunity to maybe do like a night vision or heat sensory version for folks who need that. And I really want to just mention the shot on the right with the little child. There are a lot of hospitals that are experimenting with glass when kids come in to have their chemotherapy and other treatments. They can put on glass, and there are zookeepers walking around, and they can ask the zookeepers questions, and they can go into the animal enclosures. And you could do that on a phone or a laptop, but it's just a little bit more escapist for the kids. And if Google Glass just did any three of these things, we would say, that's an incredible invention. It helps people with mobility and accessibility issues, and it helps children. But because it doesn't do everything for everybody, there's a lot of dismissal. But I'd say it's going to be a great thing for the future. And finally, I just was reviewing the literature before I updated this talk, and I thought it was interesting. An article in Wired's editor-in-chief, Chris Anderson, was quoted, and he said that wearable technology is coming from the piece dividend of the smartphone wars. You really had to have a lot of investment in hardware, in software, in marketing, and a lot of logistics to bring those things to market. But now, as the sensors and chipsets get cheaper, and wearables connect via Bluetooth, so you don't have to have a separate data plan for these. And companies like the Pebble smartwatch who've used Kickstarter to get themselves off the ground, a little tiny company can compete with the big guys. And I think that's a heartening message. So I look forward to things to come, and I think both publishers and libraries as well as startups are going to be right there in the mix. So thank you.